Good evening. We've just ended the Captive Pass series of conferences 2009 here in Bhubaneswar on the 16th of September. And with me, I have the pleasure of welcoming Mr. Aveek Banerjee, who is the Associate Vice President of the Power Exchange India Limited. Welcome to the conference again, Aveek, and I hope you had a wonderful conference thus far.
Yeah, we did. Thanks.
Great. Aveek, we'd like to know the fact that you saw that you made a presentation on market splitting. Very briefly, if you had to inform lay people about what market splitting is all about and how they can stand to lose or benefit from it.
See, market splitting is a procedure that's been followed by exchanges to get around the issue of congestion. Now, an exchange essentially works on the premise that you're able to match demand and supply, and that is purely done on a financial basis, on the basis of price and volumes. Now, to do that perfectly, you obviously need to have the transmission capacity in place. But if you have the imperfection of not having the adequate capacity, then you'll have to separate out markets, split them and adjust. So it gives you a less than perfect solution, but one that is constrained by the transmission constraint.
Great. So since you're an IT-enabled platform, what kind of algorithm do you use to ensure that this, like you explained, that the supply region, the power surplus region, you have lower prices, so that to disincentivize the whole thing, and in power deficit regions you have higher prices, so that demand and supply get matched, and the congestion in the corridor is just about even.
See, right now the regulator has mandated that the exchanges have to have a platform which can run a minimum of 10 markets. Now, our platform actually is enabled for many more. It's enabled for n number of markets. We can set the number of markets we wanted to run on. But it's enabled for 10 right now. So what you do is you run it for 10 markets. So you have northern region is split into 2 markets. Each region is split into 2 markets. So that's how you come to 10. Now, what we do is we run the market assuming there's no congestion. Then we check for the interconnector between each of these markets. And wherever there's a congestion, the platform automatically splits the markets on either side of the interconnector and separately matches them.
Okay.
So that all happens automatically. There is no real intervention, human intervention involved at this stage.
Right. And how does the pricing work? For example, what kind of calculus do you use to ensure that say a price differential of say 8 rupees and say 14 rupees? People want to buy power at 8 rupees, people want to sell power at 14 rupees, and then, or it could be the other way around. So many buyers, so many sellers offering different schedules, offering different price, price and volume requirements. And how do you ensure that all of it comes together?
See, there's no calculus involved. It's basically simple economics. It's you have a demand curve, you have a supply curve, and wherever it matches is where the demand equals supply.
Great.
So the price point at which demand equals supply is the price point at which the market gets cleared.
Great. Now, if demand is equal to supply, then why doesn't the generator get price for the entire amount of power traded? Why does this this charge, if the customer is buying it at say 8 rupees and the demand the supply is selling at 4 rupees, this entire 4 rupees, or actually not in the entire 4 rupees, but most of the 4 rupees goes to another fund, which is to develop the transmission capacity. That's the whole idea. Now, what is really the rationale behind this idea? Though of course I know that power exchange is not really enforced this. This is coming from the regulatory authority. What is the logic behind this market design?
See, the logic is this was a market design which was picked up from developed markets where a large part of the power is actually traded on the exchange.
Such as Nord Pool.
Yeah. So when you have a very large part of the power traded on the exchange, you will want signals regarding transmission pricing to come through to the marketplace. And that would be obviously in the form of some commercial signal. So there will be some price involved to that. And this congestion fund that is collected would then go back and go to developing the transmission capability, so you don't have congestion at a later point in time.
Right.
But as I said during the presentation, the issue we have in India is that the exchange is actually a very small part of the market. So it's not really sending any correct signals. I mean, you're collecting funds from a small bunch of guys who are really participating in the market. But because the market is so small in the overall perspective, it is not going to really send any signals towards adding to transmission capacity.
Okay, so no price signaling there, no volume signaling there, because
the intention is there, but the market is too small to do it at this stage. So it is not really serving the purpose.
Right. So, and the funds that have been collected, can they be really gainfully employed to set up more, for example, suppose it has been gained, all this money has been culled out of a certain corridor, say north to south or east to west or whatever that particular line is. So does this mean that, or do you think it's right that the corridor should be set up only along that line? Because that's where the money has come from.
Ideally it should. The regulator will look into how that money is going to be spent. Now the intention is you will deploy that money to wherever the congestion was the most.
Right.
so that you will reduce the congestion among in that area. But as I said, now the same corridor is being used by a lot of participants. The power exchange, power flow is a very small part of the flow that's happening on that corridor. So really, and you're only collecting the fund from a very small part of the market which is using that corridor. So to that extent, it's not going to be adequate.
Can't we argue the other way? Suppose we don't collect this fund. We don't charge, we actually give them the actual, suppose there is 4 rupees and 8 rupees, let's settle at 6 rupees.
Yeah.
So 2 rupees accrue to the generator, 2 rupees accrue to the buyer. Now this would incentivize them, this would incentivize the buyer's end where there's a power deficit for generators to actually relocate to that place, or at least invest new capacities over there, because they know they'll get a good price straight over there. They don't need to use any transmission surcharge. So there's a chronically power deficit region, or one that is largely power deficit over a large period of time. People will actually set up new investment capacities over there. So why invest in just transmission lines when you can relocate or set up new generation capacities in the region?
No, that is a point. In fact, there are many ways in which that fund could be deployed. It could be either divided between the buyer or seller, or as I said, in the weighted average method, it would go to the buyer. See, ultimately, whichever side it goes to, ultimately it doesn't really make a difference in the overall context, because people get to know what's going to happen in the market and they build it into their pricing.
Right.
So whether you load it on the buyer, load it on the seller, ultimately over the long run, it all evens out.
Right. Finally, Aveek, we'd like to know what is your vision of the next 5 to 10 years of how the power markets will develop. The coming on of the futures, there'll be coal futures, there are electricity futures. There are problems in jurisdiction, but we'll have to see how it plays out. But overall, how will the power exchanges, help develop the power markets?
At the moment, the way we look at it is we need to get more into physical futures, get the physical futures stabilized, and maybe you will have cash futures at a later point in time. But it's very essential that we actually get to a stage where the power markets are running in a very stable manner, where the price discovery is very stable.
Right.
Because the sort of volatility we have been seeing in the day-ahead market so far, we obviously cannot have cash settlement given that there's so much volatility in the physical market, because that might feed back into the physical power market. And power being a socially sensitive topic, and one that has many more ramifications than many of the other commodities, I think we need to handle it that much more carefully.